Yes, so let's continue. And so a chattel really is an item of property other than real estate. Okay, so détenu, trespass chattel, détenu, when a person is wrongfully retaining goods, may have come into possession of them legally but refuses to return them. And calculation of damages essentially amounts to a forced sale of the goods. So détenu, like conversion, involves a wrongful possession of someone else's goods, but where conversion requires wrongfully taking control of the goods through some intentional act, détenu deals with situations where the person is wrongfully retaining the goods, like conversion. The calculation of damages, well, essentially amounts to a forced sale of the goods, but since détenu is a continuing tort, damages are calculated as at the date of the trial. So just to be clear, a détenu is a legal claim to recover wrongfully detained goods or possessions. Next we have false imprisonment. The unlawful and intentional restraint of goods against their will occurs when people are intentionally restrained against their will without lawfully authority. Complete restraint is not required in this case, right? Anyone may arrest without a warrant a person whom he finds committing an indictable offense, a person who, on reasonable grounds he believes, has committed a criminal offense or is escaping from or freshly pursued by persons who have lawful authority to arrest that person. Okay, so the owner of a person in lawful possession of property, or a person authorized by the owner or by the person in lawful possession of the property may arrest a person without a warrant if they find them committing a criminal offense. This they make the arrest at that time, or they make the arrest within a reasonable time afterwards, right? So anyone other than a peace officer who arrests a person without warrant will need to deliver the person to a peace officer. Malicious prosecution available to victims of improper use of criminal justice systems. The conditions are the following. The defendant in the tort action must have initiated a crime or criminal or quasi-criminal prosecution, accused, acquitted, or prosecution abandoned, prosecution motivated by malice, and no reasonable grounds to have originally proceeded with criminal action. This is malicious prosecution. Next we have private nuisance. Definition is when a party uses property in such a way that it causes damage to property or interferes with a neighbor's use or enjoyment of their property. So actionable only when property is being used in an unusual or unreasonable way. Right? So it takes place when there is interference with some public property. Protesters blocking a road or park or a mill, polluting a river would be examples. Only rarely is an action of public nuisance brought, and then usually by the government. Defamation, a detrimental false statement about someone must be published or must be published or broadcast. In other words, if you do that, it is a defamation and is detrimental. It's primary concern for business involved in media communications, but all commercial enterprises face some risk over defamation. So it is possible to defame a corporation or a product. Next we got libel and slander. Slander is spoken defamation, very simply, and libel is usually written defamation. So modern forms of mass communication means the rationale for distinguishing between libel and slander is breaking down. So all broadcast defamation constitutes libel. Many issues arise with defamation on the internet, and jurisdiction has access to author information through Internet Service Provider, ISP. Cyber libel occurs when someone posts on the internet or emails a statement that is untrue and damaging relating to another individual. We have injurious falsehood. This is product defamation, protects an interest in a person's property, products, or business. Plaintiffs must prove a false statement was made by a defendant, it was published to a third person, and maliciously and without just cause or excuse, and results in special damages to the former of pecuniary loss. Other torts impacting business, inducing breach of contract. Commonly, this is when luring people to breach their current employment or supply contracts. Unlawful means tort extends civil liability without creating new actionable wrongs. Regardless of contract, unlawful conduct associated with a complaint, such as bribery, intended to resulting in harm, and intimidation, threat of violence, or some other illegal activity forcing a party to do something that harms it. Other torts, intentional infliction, I should say, of mental suffering related to intimidation, let's say nervous shock. Deceit, fraudulent misrepresentation, involves the fraudulent, intentional misleading of another person causing damage. And there is conspiracy to injury, will involve price fixing and supply chain interference by two or more people. Continue. Passing off is piggybacking by misrepresentation with the defendant trying to capitalize on the goodwill created by the plaintiff. So piggybacking usually means you ride on somebody else's coattails and you follow their lead. Misuse of confidential information, improper disclosure of information. Right, so an example is a restaurant adopts, let's say, the golden arches of McDonald's. Privacy, invasion of privacy takes the form of a physical intrusion, surveillance, misuse of an image or name, or access to information. This is privacy protection provided by statute law. Federal and provincial privacy statutes come into place. Internet has certainly heightened concerns over privacy and confidentiality, and more as we go forward. So what happens is legislation at both the federal and provincial levels in place to control the collection, use, and distribution of personal information. And continuing on privacy, talk about Privacy Act. This regulates government collection and use of private information, and this is piped up. Personal Information Protection and Electronic Documents Act regulates collection and use of private information. In Quebec, the Act respecting the protection of personal information in the private sector. And to finish off, online torts. Regulation of internet poses some unique challenges, and so how to protect the vast amounts of personal and business data is an ongoing challenge for the laws and of every country in this world. Identifying location of the person or business being dealt with are uncertain. This is a big issue if someone in another country is causing issues in some other country. And also issues of jurisdiction of where it's being done and who is being harmed. Great, thank you. That is part 2.